start with the advocates for the convention. Gentlemen, you have 5 minutes to make an opening statement.
Thank you. In the 5 minutes it will take me to my opening statement, the U.S. national debt will increase nearly $5 million in this time. Let that sink in while I explain why amending the Constitution through Article 5 of the Convention is absolutely essential. Former Congressman Peter Stark of California put it this way: the federal government today can do most anything in this country. He is absolutely right, and it shouldn't be that way. As Chief Justice John Roberts affirmed in the first Obamacare decision, the federal government can tax you for any purpose whatsoever, even to coerce you into buying health insurance. In 2 decisions in the 1930s, Congress was given the power to spend money on anything it deemed in the interest of the general welfare, and they were told they can define that term any way they want. Thanks to a decision in 1942, the Congress can regulate any business in this country, whether it engages directly in interstate commerce or not. Thanks to a decision in 1989, Congress was given the permission to delegate its legislative power to executive branch agencies, and they do. And these rules, then, that these executive branch agencies promulgate have the force of law. And these rules add $2 trillion a year to the cost of doing businesses in this country, cost that is passed on to you and I. The other side is going to tell you tonight all we need to do is elect better people to Congress and all will be well. Thomas Jefferson would disagree. He said, in questions of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. This would be sound advice, if the Constitution still had any chains. A Constitution which began of one of limited and enumerated powers has been turned into a Constitution that now permits the government to tax without limit, spend without limit, regulate without limit, delegate without limit. Is there anything that Congress cannot do? All this is perfectly legal and constitutional. Do I want to see the Constitution vastly changed or radically changed and replaced? Absolutely not. British statesman William Gladstone called our Constitution the most wonderful work ever struck off at a given time by the brain and purpose of man. I couldn't agree more. But the Constitution was not inspired. It was not perfect. Even George Washington called it the best that could be obtained at this time. But I also agree with Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who said the Constitution has proved itself the most marvelously elastic compilation of rules of government ever written. Today, the federal government has become a bloated, intrusive leviathan, meddling in every aspect of our private and public lives. Congress can fix this situation by proposing amendments, or the states can, as you just heard. But I hope it's clear that Congress will never propose an amendment which reduces in any way the awesome power they now enjoy. They will never initiate a term limits amendment. The Senate will never approve an amendment that repeals the 17th Amendment and returns them to appointees of the states. Congress last sent an amendment to the states in 1971. Over those 46 years, hundreds of amendments have been proposed by individual congressmen and never gotten out of committee. Congress is not going to fix this. They are clearly not interested. As you've heard, the Constitution calls this event a convention for proposing amendments. That is the only name the Constitution gives this event. The Constitution does not call it a constitutional convention. It doesn't call it even a convention of the states. So since both sides tonight say they respect the Constitution, I propose that we use that term exclusively tonight, a convention for proposing amendments. Somehow I think the other side may not agree with that. Here's how such a convention would work as proposed by Citizens for Self-Governance. 34 states submit an application to Congress for a convention that would provide these purposes: serve to reduce the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, or impose limits on the terms of some of its officials, such as congressmen, judges, or justices. Notice that the application is not for a specific amendment, but rather for amendments that serve specific purposes. This is an important consideration. Congress is then obliged to call such a convention. They have no choice in the matter. Calling a convention requires simply that Congress set the time and place for the event and invite the states to attend. At the appointed time and place, state delegates, commonly called commissioners, will arrive with instructions or commissions in their pockets describing the limits of their authority as representatives of their state. These commissions are also very important. Whatever proposed amendments passed with the majority vote of the delegations are sent to Congress to forward to the states and then require 38 ratification to become part of the Constitution. Ladies and gentlemen, the debt clock is ticking. John Marston said the people made the Constitution. It is a creature of their will, and it lives only by their will. It is up to we the people to reforge the chains of the Constitution.
Oh, let me just ask, we're having technical problems. There's apparently no microphone working except the one in front of me. Can you all hear in the back? Sound okay? All right.
Oh, there's that.
Is it working? It's working when it's in the mood.
Make sure the light's on in front, it's not just the bottom.
It seems to be in a good mood for a moment.
Let's take it back.
So I'm going to try and be a statue. My name is Jeff Lewis. I'm co-founder of the Patriot Coalition. I've been a citizen full-time for the past dozen years. I'd like to share something from Daniel Webster. He said that it is hardly too strong to say that the Constitution was made to guard the people against the dangers of good intentions. There are men in all ages who mean to govern well, but they mean to govern. They promise to be kind masters, but they mean to be masters. They think there need be but little restraint upon themselves. The love of power may sink too deep in their hearts. I keep hearing references to restoring the Constitution to its original intent. Well, we find the original intent in the preamble. It says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." The question tonight is not about in the weeds of whether who controls the process. There are opinions on both sides that seem valid. Some suggest the states control it, some suggest Congress does, and that won't be hammered out until there actually is one. The process is not the question before us tonight. It's whether or not we should call a convention, hold a convention to amend the Constitution. I've been doing debates. Love this thing. I've been doing debates on this issue for 3.5 years, from coast to coast. Convention of States Attorney Robert Kelly debated me in Yorktown in 2014, and he went through each article of the Constitution, of which there are 7, and he acknowledged at each instance that the problem wasn't the Constitution, that it was a president, or that it was a Congress, or that it was the courts. He never once provided one solid piece of evidence that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were flawed. They were written for the average man to protect my God-given rights, and yours, from vain and aspiring men. If people won't obey the 10 Commandments, should we amend them? If your spouse cheats on you, would you consider amending your marriage vows? If public servants won't uphold the Constitution, now, why is amending it the solution? I say it's not, that the states and the people already have enough, all the constitutional authority they need to rein in federal runaway bureaucrats. That the duty of the state, everybody that took that oath, that works for state and local government, has a duty to interpose, to stand between a rogue federal government and we the people. Not one legislator in Richmond had the backbone to stand up against the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 that authorizes for our president today to do the same thing to us that they did to the Japanese, Italian, and German Americans in World War II. It violates no fewer than 14 provisions of the Constitution, some of them multiple times, including over half of the Bill of Rights. There is no authorization for a Department of Education. Yet I guarantee you, just about every state legislator in this country that is promoting this amending process has voted for things in the Constitution now that they know are unconstitutional. Voted for the legislature.
I am the chairman of the Constitution Party of Virginia. The Constitution Party is the only political party that stands directly opposed to the Article 5 Convention. I have in my hands a copy of the Constitution. There are a few more left that I have to give out. And to preserve the nation, go to Constitution Party of Virginia Facebook page. And it's a video, plus it's also a brochure written by Scott Bradley, who is our vice presidential candidate. I'll try to close quickly with the words, again, of Daniel Webster. I am committed to the Constitution of the country, and I am committed against everything which in my judgment may weaken, endanger, or destroy it, and especially against all extension of executive power, and I am committed against any attempt to rule the free people of this country by the power and the patronage of the government itself.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate those opening statements. I'm going to suggest we give up on the microphone. It works